Thank you very much, President. Since the moment I left South Ossetia, one major question constantly goes through my mind. I want to share this question with you. And in my mind, the answer is essential to achieve a positive result in the conflict between all parties, whether they be Georgians, Ossetians, Abkhaz or Russians. When I say the conflict, I'm not only talking about the August war last year, because that war was not an isolated case. It was an escalation over 17 years since the ceasefire. And I think it's fair to say that little or nothing has been achieved in those 17 years to normalize the way the parties involved interact with each other. Thus, my question is, since our inaction in the past has allowed the conflict to be used for geopolitical and political reasons by parties who have a biased or even a prejudiced standpoint, supported the sad reality of not wanting to move from their present point of view, or worse, to profit from polarization. The real victims of that are the people who are living in these areas. What can we and what are we willing to do as the European Assembly of the Council of Europe? And even more closer to home, what can we as national parliamentarians do so that the people who live in the conflict region can build up themselves a humane and peaceful future without future war? I hope and trust that you will hold on to this question and give it your thoughts. And at the end of my speech, I will come back to you on this question and offer my solutions and invite you to elaborate your solutions during the debate. In the meantime, I would like to give you my impression of what I saw and experienced during my visit in South Ossetia. Focusing on South Ossetia and the people of South Ossetia doesn't mean that the report does not also provide an update on the humanitarian concerns raised by the earlier report covering the whole of Georgia. But let me start by saying that I very much appreciate that this time the de facto South Ossetian authorities gave me the opportunity to visit the region, to observe the consequences of the war and to get an insight in the circumstances and conditions in which people live and get a feel of the hopes and fears and emotional state of the population. But next to thanking the de facto South Ossetian authorities, I of course also want to thank the Georgian authorities especially, because they accepted that I entered by the north, which I did under the promise that next time the South Ossetians accept that I enter by the south. And I would also like to thank the Russian delegation for their assistance. I managed to visit almost everywhere and where I wanted, and talked with everybody I wanted to talk to. I like to add that each conversation had an intensity, was good, and allowed me to form an impression. Unfortunately, I was not able to visit the Agalgori district. There is and remains great uncertainty about the future of this district and the position of the ethnic Georgians who live there, or who wish to return there. The personal safety of all of those living in the region has to be safeguarded and is necessary to keep a close eye on their situation. I am pleased to note that all parties have indicated that they would be happy for me to return to the region and visit the Agalgori district. In South Ossetia, I visited villages previously inhabited by ethnic Georgians, as well as villages currently occupied by ethnic South Ossetians, and talked with many people, including persons of Georgian ethnic origin. Many of the houses and roads in South Ossetian villages are damaged by the war. And over the winter, the pressing problem was heating and the supply of gas, electricity and water. The gas supply remained cut off until the day before I visited the region on the 13th of March. And now recovery and development are needed. not only to repair homes and infrastructure, but also to provide people with ways and means to look after themselves and earn an income. The fact is that South Ossetian authorities on their own have no means to make this happen and therefore totally dependent on the assistance of the Russian authorities. The only other actor involved in the region is ICRC, which carries out its humanitarian mandate. And to avoid even further negative implications for the people, I demand the de facto authorities in South Ossetia and the Georgian authorities ease their restrictions on access to South Ossetia, both from the north and from the south, for humanitarian reasons. The Georgian villages no longer exist. There's only rubble and no sign of any belongings left in the remnants of the houses. On very few occasions did I encounter isolated houses where still somebody lived, mainly elderly and mixed couples. The systematic destruction of most of the houses is a clear indication that there has been an intention to ensure that no Georgian has a property to return to in these villages. For me, that makes the intention to cleanse the area of ethnic Georgians clear. There is little or no accountability for this destruction, and very few cases have been opened by the de facto authorities against the perpetrators of these destructions and pillage. Regardless of whom I talked to, security was one of the overriding concerns, not only by the de facto authorities, but also by people in the street. They fear a further attack by the Georgian army and are concerned by cross-administrative border incidents. They believe that Georgian troops are once again building up in zones close to the administrative border, and they allege that the European Union monitoring mission is turning a blind eye to this military build-up. Is this fear based on facts or feeling? I can't judge. But more public openness by the European Union monitoring mission on the results of its monitoring would be helpful. Thus, could lead to a greater understanding by the people in the region of the realities on the ground. During my visit, my attention was constantly being drawn to the fact that the international community and the European community are seen clearly as being pro-Georgian and anti-Russian and anti-South Ossetian. In my consideration that the de facto South Ossetian authorities are at least partly responsible for this ongoing mistrust amongst the general population. For example, the fact that they didn't have engaged with the international and European community up till now would confirm this. And also by not giving access to the EUMM. Regardless of this being true or not, the fact remains that the general population continues to be deeply mistrustful of both the international and European community, and this mistrust needs to be dealt with. The international and European community both need to take up steps to build up this much needed trust. And for this to happen, the politically and geographically isolation of South Ossetia and also from Abkhazia needs to be addressed. The de facto authorities of South Ossetia and Abkhazia and the Georgian authorities need to be more flexible in their demands in this respect. All this has repercussions on aid and assistance and also on information going into the region and information going out of the regions. In effect, this means that the world is not well informed about what is happening in Abkhazia and South Ossetia, and the population living there are not well informed about the concerns and positions of the international community. And now back to my question at the beginning of my speech. What can we